The turning tide commander, Thrain's frustration grew with each passing hour. The ground invasion had stalled completely. His warriors were sick, their equipment was failing, and the humans still refused to engage in conventional warfare. Worse, his ships were beginning to report problems. Somehow human hackers had found ways to introduce viruses into their systems. Not sophisticated attacks that tried to take control, but simple, stupid programs that did nothing but replicate and consume processing power. Lieutenant Marcus Thompson led the team responsible for the cyber attacks. They had discovered that while Vordak encryption was unbreakable, their systems had no defense against sheer volume. Millions of humans around the world were sending junk data to the alien ships, overwhelming their communication arrays with spam emails, cat videos, and memes. The advanced alien computers, designed to process complex tactical data, were choking on humanity's digital garbage. The biological warfare intensified. Dr. Mitchell had identified 17 different Earth microorganisms that could potentially affect the Vordak. These were not weaponized agents but common bacteria and viruses that humans encountered every day. The aliens, from their sterile spacecraft and controlled worlds, had no immunity to Earth's microscopic ecosystem. Strep throat, influenza, even athlete's foot became weapons in humanity's arsenal. The Vordak attempted to adapt. They modified their filters, upgraded their suits, and tried to establish sealed bases. But each adaptation was met with a new challenge. When they sealed themselves off from Earth's atmosphere, the humans introduced metal-eating bacteria into their structures. When they tried to source local water, they found it contaminated with chemicals that, while safe for humans, caused severe reactions in Vordak physiology. Public opinion across Earth began to shift from fear to determination. Videos of sick Vordak warriors stumbling through empty streets went viral. The mighty conquerors of the galaxy were being brought low by the common cold and corroded by rust. Humans began to return to their cities, not as soldiers, but as insurgents. They painted graffiti on Vordak equipment, played loud music at frequencies that hurt alien ears, and generally made life miserable for the invaders. The psychological warfare was perhaps the most effective. Humans broadcasted videos of Earth's most extreme environments to the Vordak fleet. The crushing depths of ocean trenches, the searing heat of deserts, the frozen wastes of Antarctica, the toxic environments near volcanic vents. The message was clear. This planet had created humans through millions of years of evolution in harsh conditions. The Vordak might have superior technology, but Earth itself was humanity's greatest weapon. Commander Thrain received reports that disturbed him greatly. His warriors were not just getting sick, they were becoming afraid. They spoke of a planet that seemed actively hostile to their presence. Water that burned their skin, air that clogged their lungs, ground that swallowed their equipment. Some warriors refused to leave their ships, claiming that Earth was cursed. Morale, a concept Thrain had never worried about before, was collapsing. The turning point came when the Vordak attempted to establish a base in the Amazon rainforest, thinking the remote location would be easier to control. Within days, they discovered their mistake. The rainforest was not empty but teeming with life, all of it hostile to the invaders. Insects that burrowed into their equipment, plants that released toxins, humidity that corroded their circuits. The base was abandoned within a week. The warriors evacuated covered in rashes and barely functional equipment. General Chen Wei coordinated with military leaders worldwide for the next phase. If the Vordak would not come down to fight, humanity would bring the fight to them. Using captured Vordak technology combined with human innovation, they began launching their own attacks, not with weapons, but with infiltration. Small capsules fired at Vordak ships contained not explosives, but biological and chemical agents designed to spread through their ventilation systems. The Great Dying, as the Vordak would later call it, began in the 5th week of the invasion. A modified version of yeast, engineered to thrive in the specific conditions of Vordak spacecraft, began spreading through the fleet. It consumed their food supplies, clogged their air filters, and created an environment that promoted the growth of other Earth organisms. The pristine warships became breeding grounds for Earth's microscopic life. Commander Thrain watched his empire's greatest fleet slowly succumb to an enemy they could not fight. Warriors trained to face plasma cannons and antimatter weapons were defeated by organisms too small to see. Technology that could destroy planets was rendered useless by simple chemistry and biology. The conquest of Earth had become a disaster that threatened to destroy the entire invasion force. The psychological impact spread beyond Earth. Other species in the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity, a primitive species by galactic standards, brought the Vordak Empire to its knees. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through biological warfare, chemical attacks, and sheer stubborn refusal to fight on the enemy's terms. The legend began to spread that humans were not warriors, but something far more dangerous. They were survivors. Dr. Mitchell made the discovery that would end the invasion. The Vordak's faster metabolism was not just a characteristic, but a vulnerability. They required 3 times as much food as humans and processed toxins much more slowly. By introducing specific compounds into Earth's atmosphere, compounds that humans could filter through simple masks, but that would accumulate in Vordak tissues, they could make the entire planet poisonous to the invaders. The implementation was swift and decisive. Factories worldwide began producing the compound, releasing it into the atmosphere in carefully controlled amounts. Within days, every Vordak on Earth's surface was experiencing severe toxic reactions. Their command structure collapsed as officers became too sick to function. The mighty invasion force that had conquered 47 civilizations was reduced to desperate refugees trying to escape a hostile world. Commander Thrain made the decision that would haunt his species for generations. He ordered a full retreat. The Vordak fleet, sick and demoralized, began their withdrawal from Earth's orbit. But humanity was not finished. As the alien ships prepared to enter hyperspace, they discovered that human hackers had one final surprise. The spam attacks had not just been annoyances, but carriers for something worse. Hidden in the millions of cat videos and memes were programs designed to document everything. The Vordak's technology, their weaknesses, their biology, their tactics. All of it was being transmitted back to Earth even as they fled. Humanity had not just survived the invasion, they had learned from it. The primitive species that the Vordak had dismissed as barely sapient had turned their greatest defeat into a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. The message that Earth broadcast to the galaxy was simple but powerful. We are humanity. We are not conquerors. We are not warriors, we are survivors. We evolved on a death world and we made it our home. Come to us in peace and we will share our world's wonders. Come to us in war and we will share our world's horrors. The choice is yours. The Vordak Empire never recovered from their defeat at Earth. The story spread throughout the galaxy of the species that had turned their own planet into a weapon. Other civilizations, considering whether to invade the resource-rich world, reconsidered. Earth had no fleet to speak of, no energy weapons, no shields. But they had something far more dangerous. They had evolved on a planet that killed the weak and strengthened the survivors. They had become Earth's antibodies, and any invader would face not just humanity, but the billions of years of evolution that had created them. In the aftermath, as humanity reached out to the stars with offers of friendship and trade, they carried with them a simple truth. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor the most advanced, but they were the most adaptable, the most resilient, and when threatened, the most dangerous. Not because of their weapons or their technology, but because they had learned to turn weakness into strength, to make their very world fight alongside them. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans did not need superior firepower to win wars. They just needed to survive long enough to figure out how to make their enemies lose. And on Earth, surrounded by the microscopic armies that had evolved alongside them, humanity would always have the home advantage. The Vordak Empire had conquered 47 civilizations across 3 galactic sectors, without losing a single major battle. Their arrival at Earth on a humid Thursday afternoon in July should have been just another routine subjugation. Commander Thrain stood on the bridge of his command vessel, studying the blue planet below with 6 of his 8 eyes. The tactical displays showed a primitive world with barely functional space technology. Their satellites were crude, their space station was tiny, and their defensive capabilities were laughable by galactic standards. The massive Vordak fleet materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. 300 warships, each one larger than humanity's biggest aircraft carrier, positioned themselves around Earth like a cage of steel and death. The smallest scout vessel in their fleet possessed enough firepower to level a continent. Commander Thrain allowed himself what passed for a smile among his species. This would be over within a single rotation of the planet. The translation matrices had been prepared weeks in advance. When Commander Thrain activated the planetary broadcast system, his message reached every communication device on Earth simultaneously. Television screens flickered, radios crackled, and smartphones buzzed, with the same terrifying message. The voice that spoke was deep and resonant, artificially translated but carrying an unmistakable tone of superiority and threat. Species of Earth, you have been selected for integration into the Vordak Empire. Your planet contains resources valuable to our expansion. Your population will serve the Empire's needs. Resistance is illogical. You have witnessed our fleet. Each vessel carries weapons beyond your comprehension. Surrender immediately and your species will be permitted to survive as subjects of the Empire. Resist and we will reduce your cities to ash and enslave the survivors. You have one planetary rotation to respond. In an underground bunker beneath Beijing, General Chen Wei read the tactical reports with growing concern. The alien ships were beyond anything humanity had imagined. Energy readings suggested weapons that could vaporize entire cities in seconds. Shield technology that made their vessels practically invulnerable to nuclear weapons. Propulsion systems that defied known physics. By every measurable metric, humanity was outmatched by a factor of thousands. But Chen Wei had studied military history his entire life. He knew that wars were not always won by superior technology. The Mongols had conquered most of the known world with horses and bows. The Vietnamese had defeated the technologically superior American forces. The Afghans had resisted the Soviet Union. Technology was important, but it was not everything. He immediately began issuing orders to military units worldwide, not for conventional warfare but for something else entirely. Dr. Sarah Mitchell was pulling another all-nighter in the archives of the Pentagon when the alien message arrived. She had been researching biological warfare countermeasures, but now her work took on a different urgency. As she studied the video feeds of the alien commander, she noticed something odd. The alien's respiratory system seemed to cycle much faster than a human's. Their atmosphere processors on the ships were running at maximum capacity. She made a note and continued observing, her scientist's mind cataloging every detail. The Vordak had expected immediate surrender. It was the logical response when faced with overwhelming force. Every other species had done so. Some had tried to negotiate, others had begged for mercy, but all had ultimately submitted. What they had not expected was silence. Earth did not respond to their ultimatum. No surrender, no defiance, just silence. Commander Thrain found this mildly interesting but not concerning. Perhaps the primitive species needed time to accept their fate. 20 hours into the deadline, Thrain ordered a demonstration of power. A single energy beam lanced down from the flagship, targeting an uninhabited island in the Pacific. The island ceased to exist, transformed into a cloud of superheated vapor that rose into the atmosphere. Surely now the humans would understand. But still, there was no response. No communication of any kind. It was as if the entire planet had gone deaf. Lieutenant Marcus Thompson watched the island's destruction from his position in Hawaii. He was part of a new kind of military unit, hastily assembled in the past 20 hours. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They were hackers, engineers, biologists, and chemists. Their weapons were not guns or missiles but laptops, microscopes, and chemical compounds. General Chen Wei's orders had been clear and unconventional. They were to treat the invasion not as a military assault, but as an infestation to be eliminated. When the 24-hour deadline expired, Commander Thrain ordered the ground invasion to begin. Drop pods fell from the warships like deadly seeds, each one containing a squad of Vordak warriors. They landed in major cities across the globe, expecting to find cowering populations ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty streets. The cities had been evacuated, but not abandoned. They were transformed into trap-filled mazes designed to confuse and separate the invaders. The Vordak warriors were each 2.5 meters tall, covered in chitinous armor that could deflect small arms fire. Their plasma weapons could melt through steel, and their combat suits enhanced their already impressive strength. In a straight fight, a single Vordak could defeat a dozen humans. But the humans were not interested in straight fights. As the first squads advanced through New York City, they noticed their communication systems beginning to fail. Unknown interference was jamming their signals, cutting them off from their ships and each other. The first attack came from the sewers, not soldiers, but remote-controlled drones carrying packages. The packages exploded, but not with conventional explosives. They released clouds of fine powder that settled on the Vordak armor. Within minutes, the warriors noticed their suits beginning to malfunction. The powder was a mixture of industrial compounds designed to corrode their equipment. Their advanced technology, never designed to deal with such primitive but effective attacks, began to fail. In London, the Vordak faced a different problem. The humans had flooded the Thames and turned the city into a marsh. The heavy Vordak warriors, weighed down by their armor, found themselves sinking into mud that had been specially treated to become nearly liquid under pressure. Their plasma weapons were useless against an enemy that refused to show itself, striking only with traps and automated systems. Moscow presented yet another challenge. The Russians had turned the winter to their advantage, using liquid nitrogen to create temperatures far below what the Vordak had expected. Their suits, designed for the controlled environment of spacecraft in normal planetary conditions, struggled to maintain proper temperature. The aliens found themselves moving slower, their reaction times increasing as their systems diverted power to heating. But it was in Tokyo that Dr. Mitchell's observations proved most valuable. The Japanese defenders had released a carefully designed cocktail of airborne particles into the atmosphere. Harmless to humans, these particles were sized perfectly to clog the Vordak breathing filters. The aliens, with their faster metabolism and higher oxygen requirements, found themselves gasping for air. They were forced to retreat to their ships for fresh filters, only to find that the humans had already adapted the mixture. Commander Thrain watched the tactical displays with growing confusion. This was not how invasions proceeded. The humans were not fighting. They were infesting, corroding, and dismantling. They turned their cities into weapons, their atmosphere into poison, their very planet into a hostile environment. Every advantage the Vordak possessed was being neutralized by crude but effective countermeasures. The first Vordak warrior to die did not fall to a weapon, but to a disease. The humans had somehow introduced a modified version of the common cold into the ventilation systems of the drop pods. The virus, harmless to humans who had evolved alongside it for millennia, was devastating to the Vordak immune system. Within hours, entire squads were incapacitated, their bodies fighting an enemy they could not see or understand. General Chen Wei monitored the situation from his bunker. The plan was working better than expected. Humanity could not match the aliens in technology or firepower, but they did not need to. They just needed to make Earth too expensive to conquer. Every species evolved in its own environment, adapted to its own conditions. Earth was humanity's home, and humans knew how to make it inhospitable to anyone else.